I think this is the last thing I'm supposed to share. Like, I've been avoiding sharing this because it's just like uncomfortable to talk about. So when you make the decision to obey God, one, you should feel relieved and excited, and sometimes you might feel nervous, you might feel some anxiety, you may feel like, what have I gotten myself into? The other things that you may not be aware of that you may feel or that you may experience is you may experience buyer's remorse. So, y'all know I went back to school this year. Today was my last class, and my final for this class is next Wednesday. And since before classes started, I have felt this heaviness, and it's come and gone. It's come and gone. But I have questioned myself, and I can't even say that this is imposter syndrome. This is, for me, I know that this was an attack. So, right before school started, you know, everything I thought I was going to have in place from a village perspective kind of just was swept right from up under me. And I talked to my therapist about it. I was able to confront how I felt about it and navigate that. And you know, the overarching lesson of giving God back control, returning control to God, which meant I needed to go with the flow as things came. As I mentioned in my last video, ask God if it was my problem to solve. If it wasn't, turn it over to God and just pray for peace. If it was my problem, I, did what I could within my ability to control. So this has happened. This has been the pattern, rather, the entire time I've been in school. There have been challenges to sprout up, whether it's relationally, honestly, all of these challenges have been relationally in some way, shape, or form. So I can be honest and say I've been attacked in the area of my relationships. And I recognize that for me, giving up control was more so to recognize and accept, like, I cannot control other people. I can't control how people respond. I can't control how long it takes somebody to heal. I can't control how they operate out of their unhealedness. I can't control any of that. I just have to ask God, as it concerns other people, how to pray for them and how to relate to them. Am I supposed to be in close relationship with them, like continue friendships, etc.? Or am I supposed to pull back and distance myself? Usually enforcing a boundary or recognizing that some relationships need to sit on ice for some time. And in other situations, it's just recognizing that I have to give people the space to fail and trust that God is going to meet the need in the midst of that thing. So, when you're obeying God and doing something that you know God has told you to do, in my case, God told me to go back to school. God said this was the time, this was the season. Every time I prayed, as I was obeying God, I kept asking for reassurance. I kept asking, God, is this right? Is this your time? Is this your season? And even when these things popped up, I was like, okay, God, you told me to go back to school. So why is this happening? And even until today, like I've still had situations pop up and pop off. And I keep asking God, like, why is this happening? And so what I believe I'm supposed to share as it concerns obedience and how it ties into all the return stuff, God wanted me to return to being obedient. And I feel like, I haven't been disobedient per se, but this is more so immediately obeying God and just trusting God, even when things don't look like how I want them to look. As a planner, I like things to be in a certain order. I like the things to be in a certain way. I like to be able to execute things when I want to. And there have been so many things that have happened outside of my control that have crushed that part of me. And even now, even up until like today being my last class and all the things that went on today, I'm supposed to share that obedience sometimes is difficult. Like and what I mean is sometimes what God is asking you to do may be very hard because it's pulling something out of you that you don't believe exists inside of you. It's causing you to have to wholeheartedly rely on God and trust God to get you through that season, or to get you through that thing, or get you to where He's calling you to be. And unfortunately, sometimes when God calls us to do things and we obey immediately, because this going to school thing was an immediate obedience. I took the LSAT last year and I kept praying. I was like, okay, God, am I supposed to go to school? Go ahead and apply to school. If not, and every time I asked God and God gave me the next step, I did what was required of me. And so this has been like, I've heard the description is called, or I don't know exactly how it's described, but basically, people will say God will give you step A, and then you have to take step A, and then the other steps will appear. In this case, God gave me, each step by step, and then I'm here at, say, D, for example, and I can see Z, but I don't see the steps in between there. And it's literally has been an immediate obedience. Every time God told me to do something, I did it. Every time, there was something within my control to do, I have done it. And it's been hard. It's been challenging. And it's difficult to explain when God called you and told you to do something and you're doing it, and you get the response from outside voices like, well, this is what you wanted. When, yes, this is what I wanted, but this is also what God told me to do. And so you wanting a thing and you doing what God told you to do doesn't mean that thing won't come with challenges. It doesn't mean that thing won't be hard. It doesn't mean that you'll have all the answers or see all the steps. And, knowing what lies ahead for me is, studying for the next week and a half, because my finals on the 6th. And, I've already turned in my final paper from my other class, and my other class had finished the week before. Now I'm in the waiting. And so I've been obedient. I've done what God told me to do, and I'm in the waiting. And even the waiting is hard because, that voice of doubt wants to come in and say, have you done enough? Have you done everything you're supposed to do? And when you think about it in terms of other people, like, you have to trust that when you've done something as it relates to someone else, you have to trust that you have obeyed God, and you have to let God do the rest. You have to let God fill in the rest of the steps, fill in the rest of fill in the gaps. And so being obedient has been hard for this, because there have been so many, to me, there have been so many what I feel are casualties. Like, I know because I'm in the midst of it, I can't see like the benefits. I can't see how it won't have a negative impact on things, but I'm not supposed to see it. I'm supposed to have faith and trust and believe God that it's going to work out for the best. I'm supposed to have faith and trust that, I'm doing my part. And if I'm not doing my part, I know how to improve or where to go to get help. And I know that God has put people in my life to pray for me and pray me through this season. And so, all of that to say, obedience can be hard. Obeying God can be hard. It can be challenging. It can be difficult because oftentimes you don't get to see the consequences. Again, consequences are just effects, good or bad. You don't get to see the consequences of your choices. You don't get to see what is impacted by you giving God your yes in one area. And ultimately, what I'm really having to rely on right now and go back to is Romans 8:28. Knowing that, this is going to work for my good, and it's not going to just work for my good, but it's going to work for the good of everybody around me, everyone I love, because I'm obeying God, and these people around me are being impacted by my obedience, whether it's they're seeing it for themselves and it may, be an inspiration to them, or, on the other side, like, it's impacting my son and he is seeing like the perseverance when things are challenging. And, my hope is that everybody around me will see like it's okay to give God your yes. It's okay to not understand or see all the steps between each step that God gives you, but to trust and know that God is going to work it out for you. And even when it's hard, it's okay to acknowledge the difficulty. It's okay to acknowledge the challenge, and don't feel ashamed for it. Don't let somebody shame you for obeying God and doing what God told you to do. Don't let someone make you feel bad because you were obedient in doing what God told you to do. But instead, just keep pressing, keep doing your part, keep doing the work that you're called to do, and keep moving forward, because ultimately, when that journey or assignment is done, we can trust and rest in God's voice of, hearing good, well done, my good and faithful servant. And so I really needed to say this to encourage my own self, because, like I said, I have a week and a half before my final, and it's just been so much this last 4 months, just so much. And, so many things I haven't gotten to do, like not from a needing to do things perspective, but I have not been able to process things how I would like, just because I have to keep moving. And so, one, that's a reminder for me to set up an appointment this week with my therapist. But two, it's also a reminder to me that, to not forget to show up for myself, and to also remember that God's got me. And so I say that to you too. Like, if you're in the middle of obeying God, God gave you an assignment that seems very difficult and very uncomfortable. I want you to rest in knowing that God has you, and that as long as you keep saying yes every time, every step of the way, God will put those other steps before you. You might even skip steps. And so that's it. And I can't wait till my test is done.